Hey everyone, welcome back to Infinite Podcast. I'm here with Simon, diving into something pretty intense today, surveillance societies. So Simon, discussing real versus real life, how close do you think we really are to those Black Mirror scenarios? In places like China and the UK, surveillance is massive. Do you think everywhere else is just a step away from that level of monitoring?
Oh, Joe, that Black Mirror stuff? We're practically living in an episode. I mean, have you seen the cameras on every street corner? And our phones. They know more about us than our moms at this point. But hey, at least we're not at that creepy level with robotic dogs patrolling the streets yet. What's next? Drones delivering our pizza and spying on us? Oh, wait, they're already working on that.
Yeah, the phone thing is wild. But seriously, isn't there a flip side to it? Like everyone freaks out about privacy, and don't get me wrong, it's important. But sometimes I wonder if we sacrifice safety for privacy. You've got these street cameras possibly preventing crimes, right? But then, where do you draw the line before it becomes too much like those dystopian nightmares? What do you think, Simon? Are we just trading one evil for another here?
Oh, Joe, it's totally like picking between the lesser of two evils, right? On one hand, you have these cameras catching bad guys and stuff. Cool, good for us, sort of like our electronic watchdogs. But on the other hand, dude, it's like your every move is taped, and that's downright creepy. Imagine chilling at home and thinking, is my smart TV watching me back? Makes you want to wrap yourself in tinfoil, huh? Just got a question. Man, how much privacy are we ready to give up for this so-called safety blanket?
Um, yeah, that privacy trade-off is like super unsettling. I mean, where do we even draw the line? It's all cool until you feel like you're in an episode of your life scripted by someone else. Creepy stuff. So, Simon, what about this? Are there tech advances that you think could balance out these concerns? Like anything on the horizon that makes you go, okay, this might actually work without freaking everyone out?
Yeah, Joe, the tech balance thing is tricky, right? Like, I've heard about this encryption jazz and blockchain stuff. Supposedly, they can keep our data more private while still, how to say, letting the good guys do their thing. But seriously, does that make anyone else's head spin? It's like, sure, encrypt my sandwich order because who knows, someone might steal my turkey and Swiss preference. But honestly, if it keeps things a bit more secure without turning us into a reality show for Big Brother, I'm cautiously optimistic. What about you, man?
I get the encryption and blockchain hype, sure, but there's this part of me that's like, is it really going to work as promised? You've got these tech solutions, right? Always sounds great in theory, but then application, that's a whole other mess. And come on, Simon, are the good guys always good? There's always that gray area, like who watches the watchers. Feels a bit circuitous, if you ask me. What do you make of these tech checks and balances? Are we just putting too much faith in them without considering the broader implications?
Um, yeah, Joe, it's kind of like putting all your trust in a diet plan, but still keeping a stash of chocolate bars under the bed, right? These tech options sound stellar on paper, like, we've got you covered. But just like in horror movies, who's that hiding behind the curtain? Are we just loading up on this tech candy thinking it'll fix every privacy boo-boo without looking at the expiration date? I mean, sure, blockchain is fun to say, and encryption makes us feel like wannabe spies, but really, how do we even know the watchers aren't having popcorn and watching our every stumbling step? It's like trusting your sneaky little brother with your secret brownie stash. Not exactly foolproof, huh, Joe?
Absolutely, diving a bit deeper into that, beyond just being a creepy concept, the whole surveillance society scenario is kind of scaffolded by this huge infrastructure. For instance, let's talk facial recognition technology. It's not just about spotting you at the crosswalk anymore. It's ridiculously precise now, recognizing people even under varying light conditions and different angles. Then there's AI synthesis, kind of freaky stuff. You've got algorithms that can mimic your voice or slap your face on a video doing things you'd never do. Privacy isn't just personal, it crosses into how we are perceived publicly. And here's another layer: data brokers. These aren't government bodies, but private companies silently trading our personal info like baseball cards. From shopping habits to personal emails, they create detailed profiles used by marketers, or worse, swindlers. So Simon, looks like it's more tangled than the cords behind your TV, huh? What's your take on dealing with these shadowy figures hoarding our digital footprints?
Joe, I get that duct taping the webcam feels like step one in a digital age survival guide, right? But hang on, let's flip the pancake here for a sec. So we talk about these privacy nightmares, but let's think about the other side. Companies, sure, there may be trading info like gossip in high school hallways, but sometimes it's not just for kicks or sneaky ads. Like data helps improve services, make things user-friendly. If a shop knows you dig sci-fi books based on your browsing, wouldn't hurt if they nudge you toward the latest space opera, right? But okay, let's squint a bit at facial recognition. Yeah, it smacks of Big Brother watching, every blink. However, isn't catching crooks and finding missing people kind of crucial? When tech helps slam the door on some shady business or reunites families, shouldn't we give it a little nod? Sure, everyone loves a good conspiracy theory. No doubt chilling to think there's a digital puppet master pulling strings. But hey, while wrestling with the what-ifs, let's not brush off the upsides that sprinkle our daily tech feast with some tasty bits, right? The world ain't all spies and lies. At least I hope not. What about you, Joe? Ever found some digital silver lining in this cloudy cyberspace?
Oh, flipping the pancake. Nice. You've got a point with the perks, Simon. But you gotta admit, it feels like we're trading bits of our soul for convenience. Sometimes I wonder if we're heading towards choosing matrix pods because, heck, they make decisions easier. What keeps you from tossing your phone into the lake some days?
Oh, Joe, if I had a dime for every time I wanted to chuck my phone into the lake, I'd be, buying the lake. But then who would text me about the apocalypse, huh? Besides, where else am I going to watch cat videos and call out for pizza at 2 a.m.? It's like this love-hate tango with tech. We just can't quit dancing.
Ha, right? The whole can't live with it, can't live without it dilemma. But think about this. Even with all the convenience, there's a line, right? Say your smart home. It's cool until it starts dictating what you should eat based on your health data or fridge content. Where do we draw that tech tolerance line before we end up in like a techno dictatorship? What helps you decide when enough's enough with invading tech?
Oh man, Joe, deciding where to draw the line with tech. It's like trying to grab a greased pig at a fair, right? You want the fun without slipping in the mud. For me, it's all about keeping enough human in the mix. Like, let me choose my snacks. Smart fridge? Guess we gotta stay sharp, question where our data's going, and maybe not lean too hard into convenience that feels kinda bossy. Anyone else getting that tech is too clingy vibe? What do you think keeps our tech from turning into a techno tyrant?
Totally get that clingy tech vibe, Simon. That actually slides us right into another tricky area: AI in governance and law enforcement. Have you heard about these predictive policing technologies, or even scarier, the social credit scores popping up in some places? It's like AI stepped out of managing our playlists to potentially deciding our futures. What's your take on this algorithmic leap into our personal rights?
Oh, Joe, predictive policing and social credits sounds dystopian, huh? But let's toss another pancake here. Could these systems actually make things fairer, maybe? Think about it. An AI doesn't hold grudges or get biased the way humans can. So if done right, and huge if there, it could lead to more objective decisions. But then, crunching someone's life down to data points, it's a slippery slope from helpful to control freak on steroids. What's your take on balancing those scales without tipping over into sci-fi horror territory?
Yeah, the fairness angle is intriguing, Simon. AI could, theoretically, level the playing field by stripping away human bias. But here's the rub. Who programs the AI? Like, there are these underlying algorithms crafted by, yep, you guessed it, humans. So isn't there a risk of embedding subtle biases right into the system from the get-go? And then crunching life to data points, like you said. That's dehumanizing, isn't it? It strips away the nuances that make us, well, us. Are we really okay with an algorithm deciding who gets a loan or who gets flagged as a potential threat based on past data and potentially skewed markers? Feels a bit like we're gambling with human rights here. Where do you stand on that balance between technological oversight and maintaining personal freedoms?
Yeah, Joe. Totally see your point about those sneaky human biases sneaking into AI. It's like thinking you're getting a clean slate, but really, it's just scribbles from the same old chalk. And about this whole crunching life to data points, I'm like, no thanks. People aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, right? But here's where I kind of zigzag. What if we tweak these AIs, make them super transparent? Like every decision it makes, bam, it's got to show its homework. Really lay out how it got from A to B. That might strip down some of these glaring issues, maybe reel in the techno dictator vibe. Think that could ease us a bit into the tech takeover? Or are we just tossing coins in a wishing well here, hoping we don't end up under total algorithmic rule? What's your feel on pulling back that curtain, Joe?
Pulling back the curtain? That's like asking for a backstage pass to the AI show, right? Transparency sounds pretty solid in theory. If we're swinging towards this algorithmic governance, seeing under the hood, that's crucial. It's about keeping the tech checks in check. But then again, even with all the transparency, there's that big ol' human element, interpretation. Just because you see how it got from A to B doesn't always clarify the why, you know? And with AI making decisions based on zillions of past data points, we got to ensure it doesn't just reinforce existing inequalities or overlook individual contexts. So yeah, transparency is a start, but it's not the cure-all. Kind of feels like navigating through fog with a flashlight. Helps a bit, but doesn't clear the path entirely.
Oh, Joe, navigating with a flashlight in fog, huh? Makes me think we're kind of Indiana Jones in this tech jungle, trying not to step on booby-trapped tiles. Makes you wonder, what's lurking in the shadows, waiting to trip us up next, right?
Exactly, Simon. Navigating this tech jungle feels a bit like swinging on vines over pitfalls. And speaking of traps, we got to be wary about how these systems could, evolve. What if today's AI guardrails become tomorrow's shackles? Without clear rules and real accountability, who's to say AI won't override human rights? Like imagine AI systems gradually taking more control under the guise of efficiency or security. Suddenly, it's not just recommending books or movies, it's making choices that shape our everyday lives without us even noticing, until maybe it's too late. We think we're wearing the hat, leading the way, but what if we're just running through someone else's maze? Kind of spooky when you lay it out like that. How do you feel about setting boundaries in advance to avoid that kind of future, Simon?
Boundaries, Joe? Yeah, totally. It's like setting up a fence in your backyard to keep your pup from wandering off. We need those in this whole AI shebang for sure. But here's the itch. How far do we trust these fences? Sometimes it feels like we're saying, yeah, go ahead and watch over us. Just don't peek through the windows, right? And like, what about enforcement? Putting up a sign that says, beware of dog, doesn't stop the sneaky ones from hopping the fence anyhow. So yeah, talking boundaries is all fine and dandy in theory, but how about making sure they stick? Like, who checks the checkers? Because let's face it, tech is sly. It morphs, it evolves, and suddenly, oops, it's got more keys to your life than you have. Setting these boundaries now, before AI grows another head, sounds right, but implementation, that's the real kicker. Got any thoughts on who should hold these leash, Joe?
Absolutely, Simon. The whole who checks the checkers bit is a massive deal. It's like needing a referee who isn't just neutral, but also clued in enough to catch every sly trick in the book. Maybe it's a mix of global standards and local watchdogs, but then, yeah, who watches them too? Mapping out these boundaries so it's all transparent and enforced. That's the golden ticket. I guess we're in for some heady talks about how deep AI should dig into our lives and keeping it on a tight leash. So what'll it be? Are we ready to trust these digital watchdogs, or are further safeguards needed to keep things in check? What's next for ensuring human rights aren't overridden by algorithms?
No kidding, Joe. Sometimes it feels like deja vu, stuck in a loop with different labels. Speaking of which, shifting gears a bit, how about when people dive so deep into virtual reality that the make-believe starts getting more buy-in than the real deal? This whole concept of preferring pixels over people, it's wild, right?
Oh, definitely. It's a kind of a trip when you think about it. I ran into this story the other day, get this. A buddy of mine tried out one of those new VR games. He's usually a casual gamer, but this thing sucked him right in. By week 2, he's blowing off dinners, ditching workouts, just living in that headset. So he tells me it feels like I'm achieving something, man. Like I've got control there that I don't have in my day-to-day. And then he pauses and goes, but when I take the headset off, nothing's changed. I'm still just me. That hit me hard because it's like we're crafting these beautiful, intricate virtual worlds where everything's possible, but they pepper us with achievements and progress. Things feel more rewarding there than in real life, where rewards are slower, less flashy. Makes you wonder, are we edging towards choosing comfortable illusions over gritty realities? What do you think keeps drawing us deeper into these virtual escapes, Simon?
Man, Joe, that's the thing, right? These VR experiences, they're like supercharged versions of our reality. They give you this rush, this sense of achievement that's kind of tailored to hook you in fast. It's like your buddy's story. They engineer these worlds so you feel like a hero, a champ, all from your couch. But then, what about life outside the headset? It kind of makes me wonder. These illusions are sweet and all, but sustaining? Not really. And dude, remember that Black Mirror episode? Life's super peachy inside those simulations until the screen goes black, and well, real-world problems still there, chilling, waiting for you. So then what if we get so good at escaping, we forget how to live the unpolished, tough bits of real life? Are we setting ourselves up for a future where reality's just not enough anymore? Like, where's the line, right? How do we keep ourselves from dissolving completely into pixels?
Yeah, man, it's definitely a tightrope walk. Like you said, that Black Mirror vibe kicks in hard when you hit that off button, and reality stares back at you, all harsh and unfiltered. It's kind of like we're crafting these sweet escapes to avoid dealing with the grittier parts of life. And then there's this, how do we maintain our grip on what's real and what's just superbly rendered fiction? I mean, if we get too cozy in those VR worlds, could we end up losing touch with the skills, relationships, and even the resilience needed out here in the non-pixelated world? It's tricky, because on one hand, VR's a killer way to unwind, learn, and explore, right? But where do you think we should draw that line, Simon? How do we make sure not to lose the plot of our own real lives while diving headfirst into these digital realms?
Man, Joe, it's like VR is the cheeseburger of experiences. Delicious, easy to gobble up, and kind of addictive. But shouldn't we be hitting that salad bar called reality more often? What's stopping us from balancing both plates?
Right, Simon, balance. It's a key here. We can chow down on that cheeseburger, enjoy the rush, but we need our greens too, meaning real-world connections and achievements. What stops us, it's like often the instant gratification in VR is much more appealing than the delayed satisfaction from reality. And there's this thing about escapism becoming a lifestyle for some, right? It offers a shortcut to feeling accomplished, powerful, or even loved with those meticulously designed rewards and narratives. But if all we ever do is pursue these virtual validations, it can skew our understanding of fulfillment. How do we keep that balance? Maybe it's about setting time limits, making sure we're spending enough time with people face to face, or keeping up with activities that anchor us to the world outside the screen. Like structure, boundaries, might help prevent us from completely losing ourselves in virtual worlds, don't you think?
Yeah, Joe, totally get setting limits and all that jazz, but here's a curveball. What if limiting ourselves from VR is kind of like saying you should only read books for an hour a day because they're too immersive? Like, aren't we also seeking escapism when we dive into a good novel or binge watch a series? It's tricky, ain't it? And here's another thought. What about the good stuff VR can bring to the table, right? Not just escapism, but therapy, education, ways to connect in ways reality doesn't let us. Like people with mobility issues visiting virtual beaches, or learning history by walking through digitally reconstructed ancient cities. So isn't there a potential to use these desires not just to escape, but to expand, maybe enrich our realities? It's like we gotta weigh the pros and cons here. VR isn't just a runaway train headed towards societal numbness. Maybe it's more of a hybrid vehicle, takes us places we couldn't otherwise go, but still needs us to steer it carefully. What do you think? Are we maybe oversimplifying by just labeling VR as an escape hatch?
Yeah, Simon, that's a solid point. Comparing VR to reading books or binge watching TV, it highlights how we've always sought out these escape routes. Maybe labeling VR purely as escapism is a bit narrow minded. And you're onto something with the pros of VR, like beyond just kicking back and zoning out. It's potentially transformative for education, as you said, walking through ancient cities or imagining space exploration firsthand. And then there's therapy, right? Helping people overcome phobias or providing emotional support through scenarios that mimic real-life challenges, but in a controlled, safe environment. It's kind of like we've got this powerful tool, huh? And it's all about how we wield it. Yes, there's a risk of getting too lost in it, getting that cheeseburger effect. But if used wisely, VR can seriously enhance our lives, offer us experiences, and aid in ways traditional methods can't match. So, steering this hybrid vehicle carefully, you nailed it. Maybe it's not just about limiting time, but being intentional about how and why we use VR. Are we choosing experiences that enrich and expand, or are we just killing time? What do you reckon, Simon? Are we capable of distinguishing between beneficial usage and overindulgence?
Oh, Joe, hitting the nail on the head there. It's like having a sports car in your garage. Can you trust yourself not to speed every chance you get? Makes you wonder, are we mature enough as a society to handle this sweet VR tech without spinning out?
Oh man, that's a mind bender for sure, Simon. Speaking of spinning out, what about wheeling into the realm of neural hacking? Imagine tech so advanced it can potentially tap into our thoughts and emotions. It's like something straight out of Black Mirror, right? How do you feel about that thin line between breakthrough tech and ethical nightmares?
Yeah, Joe. Diving into someone's brainwaves, it's like the ultimate privacy invasion on steroids, right? Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Classic tech dilemma there. And man, Black Mirror totally nails that eerie vibe with this stuff. But here's my beef with it. Just because we're inching closer to figuring out brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, does that mean we're cool with becoming open books? Like, where's the line? Today, it's about maybe helping paralytics move robotic arms with their thoughts. Super noble, right? But tomorrow? Are we looking at ads popping up in our dreams because some algorithm figured out we thought about pizza a bit too much today? That's the slipperiness of this slope, dude. The thing is, these tech marvels, they're kind of double-edged swords. Great power and great responsibility. You know the drill. So, do you think we're equipped to handle that, Joe? Can we keep the bad guys out of our neural networks, or are we just kidding ourselves here?
You hit it spot on, Simon. It's truly a double-edged sword. On one side, the potential to help with BCIs is massive, like revolutionizing treatment for paralysis or mental health disorders. But yeah, that slippery slope, it's real steep. The thought of advertisers, or worse, hackers, dipping into our brainwaves is straight up dystopian. Sure, today it's about therapeutic benefits, noble causes. But once we open that door, controlling who wields this tech and for what purpose, that gets murky. And are we equipped to handle it? Man, right now it feels like we're playing catch-up with the ethical implications even while the tech races ahead. Legislation, regulations, they lag far behind. We've got to establish some robust safeguards because, once the genie's out of the bottle in neural tech, there ain't no putting it back. How do you see us striking that balance between innovation and privacy, Simon?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like playing with fire, isn't it? We want to light up the dark, help folks see better, but without getting burned in the process. Keeping that balance, man, it's tough. We definitely need to beef up those regulations, right? And not just like general rules that sort of fit everything, but real specific ones that actually address the unique challenges of messing with the gray matter. Like almost tailor-made guidelines that evolve as fast as the tech does. Because let's be honest, you can't slap a Band-Aid on a software update and call it safe, you know? And while we're talking BCIs and all this cutting-edge tech, how do we ensure these decisions involve everyone affected, not just the tech gurus and policymakers? How do you think we can get the whole community involved in these conversations, Joe?
You've just cracked it open, Simon. Engagement's the key. Maybe interactive platforms where everyday folks can voice concerns, offer ideas, like crowdsourcing ethical guidelines. Stirring up real dialogues between scientists, ethicists, and John Doe could keep things transparent. What do you reckon? Is this the step towards democratic tech innovation we need?
Absolutely, Joe. Opening up the floor to everyone sounds like a solid plan. I mean, think about it. Technology as personal and intimate as neural hacking shouldn't just be in the hands of a few. It touches fundamental aspects of human rights, privacy, and identity. And here's some food for thought. Researchers are already experimenting with implants that can enhance memory or even alter mood states. We've got studies where BCIs helped patients control devices through thought alone. The jump from there to influencing thoughts isn't science fiction. It's a potential next step that could be realized within our lifetimes. Also, some neurotechnologies are exploring how to decode specific patterns of brain activity related to language or decision-making processes. This could open doors not just to reactive systems, but proactive ones. Imagine a device that doesn't just read your brainwaves, but suggests or influences decisions based on them. But who gets to decide which influences are beneficial? And how do we protect against misuse? That's why bringing everyone into the conversation seems so vital. If the tech is shaping the future, shouldn't we all have a say in its direction? So yeah, democratizing tech innovation might just prevent us from sleepwalking into a dystopia nobody signed up for. What steps do you think we should take next, Joe?
Man, Simon, it's like we're on the brink of unlocking superhero levels of human capability with this tech. But exactly like any superpower, it begs that big question. How do we keep it from turning into our kryptonite? What's our game plan for using this power responsibly without letting it spiral out?
Absolutely, Joe. We're basically crafting the future as we go, huh? Crafting it responsibly is key. If we tackle this with wide-open dialogue and stringent but adaptable ethical boundaries, maybe we keep that kryptonite at bay. It's going to be fascinating to see how society navigates these waters. What next-gen tech issue do you think will pop up on our radar next, Joe?
Right. With all this talk about the power and potential dangers of neural hacking, it kind of naturally segues into this web of high-tech crime, kind of like a primer for what we might see in cyber noir scenarios. You know, where the gritty reality of crime meets advanced tech in those shadowy dystopian settings. What are your thoughts on how these noir narratives paint our potential future?
Oh, Joe, cyber noir, huh? It's like these stories are not just cool plots with shady alleyways lit by neon signs. They're kind of like cautionary tales. They sling us this gritty mirror showing what could happen if tech keeps sprinting ahead without, ethical guardrails, perhaps? Take classics like Blade Runner or newer stuff like Altered Carbon. They're slick, yeah. But under that glitz, isn't it just a bunch of warnings wrapped up in trench coats and cool dialogues? They've got hackers manipulating memories, AI controlling public opinion, all that jazz. And here's the twist. It's not too far off from today's headlines, is it? We've got data breaches, deepfakes, surveillance states. So when you ask how these narratives paint our future, gotta say, feels less like fiction and more like a sneak peek. What kills me, not literally, hopefully, is are we taking this seriously enough? Or are we just soaking up these tales with our popcorn, ignoring the blueprints they're laying out for tomorrow? What do you reckon, Joe? Are we living the prequel to one of these cyber noir episodes right now?
You've nailed it, Simon. It's like these stories are thrilling enough to binge, yet chilling enough to be our wake-up call. Makes me wonder, are we in episode 1 of our own cyber noir series, watching those ethical guardrails getting shaky? How do you think we can tighten them back up without stifling the innovations we obviously crave?
That's the million-dollar question, right, Joe? Tightening up our ethical game without throwing a wet blanket on innovation. It's like trying to tame a wild horse without breaking its spirit. We've got to remind ourselves, innovation shouldn't be king if it tramples over our values. So I think maybe a good start is boosting transparency, like making it crystal clear who's doing what with tech and why. Kind of insist that companies explain, in plain English, not technobabble, how their shiny new gadgets could affect Joe Average. And accountability, man, it shouldn't be just a buzzword. When things go sideways, and they sometimes will, there should be real consequences. Not just slaps on the wrist either. Serious accountability that makes even the big tech honchos sweat a little. But also, hey, we're all about fair play, right? So fostering an environment where whistleblowers and ethical hackers feel safe, pointing out flaws without fear of, getting axed or sued, that could tighten those guardrails with consistency. What do you think, Joe? Can we manage to pull off this balancing act, or are we heading for a plot twist in our very own cyber noir drama?
Man, Simon, tightrope walking over a digital canyon, that's our balancing act. If we're not careful, today's plot twists could be tomorrow's headlines. Makes you wonder, are we the heroes in this story, or the bystanders? What's our next move?
That's kind of a spooky thought, being bystanders in our own story. Makes me think, Joe, how do we step up as the heroes? Like, what actions should we be taking right now to not just watch this all unfold from the sidelines? What's your take on jumping into the fray and making some waves?
Yeah, Simon, stepping into the hero's shoes. Man, it reminds me of this time when I encountered a breach in my own little digital fortress. Some shady maneuvers were happening in my accounts, and instead of just brushing it off or waiting for the tech experts to fix things from their end, I dove right in. I started educating myself about basic cybersecurity, talking to experts, asking tons of questions, basically joining forums and communities focused on digital safety. It wasn't just about patching up my accounts. It was more about, taking ownership of my digital presence and well-being. This action, small as it was, felt empowering, man. Like suddenly I wasn't just a passive character being pushed around by technocrats and cyber villains. I had a say and a stance in my tech tale. You get me? So, diving into the fray? Yeah, it's about making those informed choices, standing up for your digital rights, embracing responsibility for your slice of cyberspace. How do you think we inspire others to join us on this front line, Simon?
Totally get you, Joe. Taking control and diving in, it's part of the bigger battle, right? It's about not just securing our own digital backyards, but also inspiring others by example. Say we keep spreading knowledge, sharing resources, maybe even launch some kind of regular segment here on cyber self-defense, huh? That can really rally the troops. And looks like this rabbit hole goes deep. Cyber noir isn't just fiction, it's becoming our reality. So what else is lurking in those shadows, waiting to be explored or exposed? Let's keep this convo rolling, man. What other mind-bending tech scenarios should we dig into next time?
Shifting gears a bit, Simon, and speaking of digital domains, cryptocurrencies and VR platforms are kind of becoming the Wild West of our modern era, right? The next frontier for not just innovation, but maybe heists? It's a whole new world where traditional rules might not apply. What do you think about this emerging landscape where digital currencies and virtual realms could potentially redefine what theft looks like?
That's an interesting point, Joe. This whole scenario with digital currencies and VR, it's kind of mind-boggling. Like, imagine pulling off a heist without ever stepping out of your house. Sounds like something from a movie, right? But here's the twist. It's happening now. And oh boy, it's not just about stealing digital cash. It's bigger. Think about hijacking entire virtual identities or tapping into someone's VR session to swindle info or funds. These aren't just thefts, they're invasions of privacy on a whole new level. But here's where I wrinkle my nose a bit. How ready are we, really? Our laws are still playing catch-up with the internet as we knew it in the 90s. So yeah, entering these uncharted territories without a solid legal compass seems pretty dicey to me. I don't know, man. What steps do you think we need to take to safeguard these awesome yet kinda scary tech advancements?
Yeah, Simon, you've hit the nail on the head. The reality is that psychological and financial stakes in virtual spaces are increasingly mirroring those in the real world. Consider this. As VR platforms grow more complex, they're not just forums for gaming or socializing, but evolving into marketplaces dealing in real estate, art, and more, all traded through digital currencies like Bitcoin. Now layer on the concept of smart contracts, those self-executing contracts with terms directly written into code, And we have a setup where hefty transactions happen without human oversight. It's like leaving your car running while you dash to the store. Might be fine, might end up gone. Moreover, an alarming trend is the rise of ransomware tailored toward cryptocurrencies. Criminals see these decentralized platforms as perfect targets because transaction trails can be exceptionally convoluted. And let's not overlook the infamous crypto exchange hacks, where entire wallets vanish into thin air, resulting in losses sometimes tallying into the hundreds of millions. So to answer your question, strengthening cybersecurity protocols feels step one. Education to empower users about potential risks and how to manage their digital assets seems critical too. Maybe even exploring more robust regulatory frameworks specific to digital realms to keep pace with rapidly evolving technologies. What's your take? Are these steps in the right direction, or do we need something more radical?
Well, Joe, it's like we're armoring up for a digital gladiator fight. And hey, if you think about those heist movies, what's always the weak link? The inside man. With VR and crypto, could we all be unwitting accomplices just by being underprepared or unaware? Crazy thought, huh?
Right? It's almost like every user becomes a potential key to the vault without even knowing it. Makes you wonder how we can flip the script and maybe use VR and crypto tech to not just defend but go on the offensive against digital crime. What if we turn the tables, Simon?
Yeah, flipping the script. Now that's a spicy idea, Joe. Like, what if we sort of built traps or defensive mechanisms within virtual realms and crypto transactions? Kind of like digital tripwires that alert users to suspicious activities or, I don't know, scrappy AI detectives on patrol in VR. And instead of just playing catch up with cybercriminals, we start setting the pace. Make them worry about stepping into our well-guarded digital domains. Could that work? What do you think, Joe? Are there existing technologies that could get us started on, this cyber defense offense mashup?
Absolutely, Simon. Delving a bit deeper into that concept, we've seen bits of this tech already in action, like anomaly detection systems in financial institutions that flag unusual transaction patterns, right? These systems could be tweaked for virtual platforms, kind of using the same logic but applied to digital behavior in VR. And let's talk AI. There are AIs developed for predicting fraud trends and scenarios. This tech is not just proactive, it's preemptive. Imagine having a personalized AI guardian capable of learning from global cyber attack patterns and then tailoring its defense mechanisms to your specific digital footprint in real time. It's like having a personal bodyguard, but for your virtual and crypto dealings. Plus, with blockchain, you've got an inherent layer of security via its decentralized nature, which protects against the traditional hacking attacks. But here's where it gets exciting. We could potentially build on that by incorporating smart contracts that automatically execute or nullify transactions based on real-time threat analysis. So yeah, there's definitely a toolkit building up here for what I'd call our cyber defense offense mashup. What do you reckon? Are we gearing up towards turning these digital spaces from the Wild West into more of a fortress?
Oh, for sure, Joe. Like turning these tech frontiers into fortresses? It sounds stellar on paper, right? But then there's the flip side. A fortress can become a prison real quick if we're not careful. Know what I mean? Like when you heavily secure something, there's always that nagging fear. Does it limit freedom? How much control are users sacrificing for safety? Does tightening security in our VR and crypto worlds mean we're also clamping down on innovation or privacy? It feels kind of like a double-edged sword to me, Joe. I mean, beefing up defenses is cool and all, but the balance, that's where it gets tricky. Are we securing our digital assets or just setting ourselves up in an echo chamber of restrictions? Just gives me the heebie-jeebies thinking about how easy it could be to tip too far one way. What's your take on striking the right balance, man?
Oh, the age-old balance of liberty versus security, eh? It's a tricky tightrope to walk, Simon. But maybe this evolving tech gives us a unique chance to redefine that balance. Could we innovate on transparency as much as we do on security? That might keep the fortress from turning into a prison. What do you think?
Oh man, the transparency thing. Spot on, Joe. It's like juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle. All right. Shifting gears to something lighter. How about those hilarious hiccups when our fancy dystopian gadgets just decide to throw a tantrum? Like, imagine some high tech criminal mastermind totally getting bamboozled by his own super gadget. Classic, right? What's your favorite goof up story there?
Oh man, Simon, there's this one story that just cracks me up every time. I remember when I was trying to set up this supposedly top-notch home automation system, everything controlled from your phone, right? So fancy, supposed to streamline your life or whatever. So here I am, attempting to impress a friend by showing off my tech-savvy setup. I give the command to dim the lights, setting that perfect mood lighting, you know? Except the system misinterprets my command, and instead of dimming, it starts alternating all the house lights like a disco party on steroids. We're standing there like, what in the high-tech hiccup is going wrong? It turned out there was some bug in how the voice recognition managed commands. So much for smooth criminal activities if even my living room becomes a rave without permission. Just shows these complex systems can sometimes be too clever for their own good, or maybe just clever enough to make us look foolish.
Joe, that's hilarious, man. The rave mode living room, classic. Makes you think, what if some big time villain had this set up during a crucial heist? Like, just as he's sneaking around, his gear goes haywire and starts blasting disco lights. But dude, seriously, gotta ask. Once everything stopped buzzing like a dance club, what did your friends say? Did they dig the unintended light show, or were they totally thrown off?
Oh, Simon, my friend was torn between amusement and utter bewilderment. But you know what they say, any memorable scene is a win if you play it off right. Ironically, ended up being one of the most talked about parts of the evening. It's these unexpected tech gaffes that stick with you, huh? Picture this with our hypothetical villain. He's all decked out in his high-tech gear, poised for the ultimate stealthy heist. But then, just as he's about to bypass the secure vault, his ultra-advanced, supposedly undetectable gadget starts loudly updating its software, or better yet, asks him to accept the new privacy terms. Totally kills the whole stealth mode vibe, right? It kind of echoes that iconic scene from the movie where the thief's getaway car won't start because the voice recognition doesn't understand his accent. Man, no matter how advanced our gadgets get, there's always room for a comedic hiccup.
Oh, for sure, Joe. Those tech mishaps are a riot when you're just trying to show off some cool gadgetry. But think about it from another angle. Like in real critical situations, if you're depending on this tech for something major and it goes all haywire, not so funny then, right? Take emergency services using state-of-the-art tech, right? Imagine if they got the disco lights treatment during a big operation. Lives could be on the line, and then poof, instead of functionality, you get flashy lights or irrelevant updates popping up. And oh, not to mention the everyday reliability we expect. Think of someone relying on smart home security. They usually swear by its efficacy until, wham, one day it malfunctions and they're exposed to actual dangers like break-ins because their high-tech system decided to take a siesta. Yeah, these glitches can make for great stories at parties, but laying it down on serious note, it ain't all fun and games when the stakes jump from personal embarrassment to personal safety, you know?
Absolutely, Simon. It's a whole different ballgame when the stakes are life and death. Kind of makes you wonder about the double-edged sword of reliance on tech in critical scenarios. But hey, shifting gears, what if we could envision humor in these high-stakes tech scenarios without the dangerous fallout? Like creating fictional scenarios where things go hilariously wrong but nobody gets hurt. Maybe that's how we keep the tech fears at bay while enjoying the laugh. What do you think?
Oh, that's a brilliant twist, Joe. Turning our tech terror into comedy gold without the real-world stakes? It's like blending a bit of sci-fi with slapstick. Imagine a heist movie where every gadget goof gets a laugh track. That could totally work as a stress reliever and still get us thinking about our tech dependency. You got any wild scenarios in mind for this comedic spin?
Yeah, Simon, I'm picturing this one scene, right? Imagine a high-tech burglar trying to sneak into a top-secret facility. He's got all this fancy gear, looking all slick, but then his invisibility cloak starts glitching, Like it flickers on and off, making him pop in and out of sight while he's trying to be all stealthy. And every time he reappears, he's in a more awkward spot. One minute he's next to a guard, totally visible, and the next, he's accidentally photobombing a security camera selfie. Could you imagine that? What about you, Simon? Got any wild tech goof-ups on your mind?
Joe, that's killer. And oh, man, it reminds me of this one time. I tried using one of those smart watches during a day out, supposed to track your fitness levels and stuff, right? So there I am, thinking I'm all high-tech and sleek. But get this, the thing starts buzzing nonstop during a quiet moment in a movie theater, like full-on buzz. I'm frantically trying to silence it, all eyes on me, and it turns out it was congratulating me for achieving my daily steps goal while I was just sitting there eating popcorn. Completely misfiring at the most embarrassing moment. Talk about technology making you stand out for all the wrong reasons, huh? Like our flickering burglar friend.
Oh, Simon, that's classic. Nothing like a tech fail in a silent movie theater to make you the unintended star of the show, huh? It just goes to show, whether it's high-stakes heists or everyday embarrassments, our sophisticated gadgets have a hilarious way of keeping us humble. Makes you wonder what other comic mishaps are out there waiting to burst our tech-savvy bubbles. What do you think is the next big blunder we'll get to witness?
Oh, definitely, Joe. All these tech goof-ups, fun as they are, kind of lead into a bigger, more serious convo. Like, what about when tech not only glitches out, but also gets real deep into predicting stuff, like crimes before they even happen? You know, that pre-crime technology sort of deal they showed in Minority Report. Pretty wild to think about machines deciding someone's fate before anything actual happens, right? Diving into those murky ethics waters, how do we balance keeping society safe while still respecting personal privacy? What's your take on this whole futuristic notion?
Yeah, Simon, that's a seriously tangled web. Like on one side, you've got this tech possibly stopping crimes before they unfold, which sounds pretty beneficial, right? But then think about the flip side. Accusing someone based on what might happen, that's trudging into murky ethical territory. Every individual's got rights, and this kind of tech challenges the very notion of innocent until proven guilty. Like looking at history, any system with that much control over personal data can lead to misuses and abuses. It's not just theoretical paranoia. Remember those times governments have surveilled and oppressed under guises of safety? Yeah, without solid checks, it's ripe for trouble. So yeah, securing society while upholding ethics, it's vital we tread carefully and weigh out every step in advancing such technology.
Yeah, Joe, that's a beefy topic. The whole idea of pre-crime tech, like, it's kind of mind-blowing, but also super troubling. It feels like straight out of a sci-fi movie, except it's creeping into reality. Predicting crimes before they even happen. I mean, sure, stopping bad stuff sounds great, right? But the ethics of it? Man, that's where it gets all naughty. Imagine being accused of something you haven't done yet, or maybe wouldn't have done at all. Where does personal freedom stand in that scenario? It's like walking on thin ice, honestly. Gotta make sure we're not trading away our basic rights for the sake of potential safety. What a balancing act, huh? How do we even start to figure that one out without tripping over ourselves?
Absolutely, Simon. It's a mega dicey balancing act. Think about it. On one hand, yeah, preventing crime before it happens, that sounds like straight up utopia stuff. But hold up, when we dig into how this could play out, yikes, the red flags just pop up left and right. Take accountability for starters. Who decides what's predictive enough to be a threat, right? Is it AI algorithms? Because if so, let's not forget these systems learn from data that might already be biased. The people programming these algorithms, are they flawless? Unlikely, man. I mean, ethics rush in full force here. How do we ensure transparency? How do individuals, challenge a system claiming they're about to commit a crime based on behavior patterns? It's sketchy. Putting that much trust in technology without concrete proof. The key could be something like stringent oversight or introducing robust legal frameworks ensuring that these tech advances don't steamroll over personal freedoms, really vetting out every step of its implementation. But man, implementation is so prone to human error and bias. It's kind of scary. What's your stance on checks and balances here? Can we really put keepers on the watchers without stumbling over ourselves, pal?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like putting a leash on a dragon. Sounds cool, but who's brave enough to hold it? Serious checks are needed, big time. Making sure this tech doesn't turn from helper to overlord? That's the real heist we gotta plan.
Yeah, Simon, it's like, how do we keep that dragon on a leash without, getting burned? We talk about monitoring the tech, but it's a cyclical beast. Who monitors the monitors, right? Diving deeper into this, clarity and context are key. Like what specific behaviors or indicators trigger a prediction? How transparent is that process? Without clear answers, it's just a black box doing wizardry with our basic rights at stake. Threading this needle involves building frameworks that aren't just reactive. It's about proactively defining what safe ethical technology looks like from the ground up and being ready to pivot as new challenges arise. It's about ensuring there's a constant dialogue between tech developers, ethicists, legal experts, and the public they serve. Pretty hefty stuff, but critical if we're serious about not sacrificing our moral compass for the sake of convenience or, even worse, misplaced security ideals. What do you think can be integrated into this framework to ensure it really holds up?
Oh man, Joe, this is like setting ground rules for a cage match between privacy and safety. What if we throw in real-time public audits? Like, make it a live show where everyone's watching the watchdogs. And hey, no room for sneaky stuff then, right?
Simon, that's a solid shout with the public audits, kind of like keeping everyone in the loop, huh? But playing devil's advocate here, could there be drawbacks? Like, think about the intense scrutiny that could actually push entities to be overly cautious, maybe even hide stuff better rather than improve. And hey, what about the data during these audits? Who gets access and how do we ensure it doesn't get misused? Transparency is great, but it's almost like handling explosive material. You want to make sure it's in the right hands. Imagine integrating AI that flags anomalies, not just for crime prediction, but within the system itself. Kind of like a watchdog for the watchdogs. Now that'd be some tight security knitting, wouldn't it? What can we add to keep this machine honest while making sure it doesn't turn into Big Brother on steroids?
Right, diving deeper into that idea of, AI watchdogs, what's crucial is setting up well-defined boundaries and responsibilities. It's like we don't just want an all-seeing eye with no one to answer to. There needs to be a clear framework, man, for how this AI operates, especially who it reports to and how often. Suppose we integrate fail-safes where this AI, if it spots something off within the system, triggers a mandatory review from multiple independent panels, not just one entity. Kind of ensures nothing shady goes under the radar? And hey, transparency should be key here, but balanced, meaning share enough so people understand and feel secure in the tech's ethics without oversharing sensitive data points that could, well, backfire or get exploited. Robust encryption methods could keep that in check while still holding that curtain open enough for accountability. What do you think, Joe? Does throwing these layers of oversight into the mix make this futuristic tech palatable, or are we just layering on more complexity?
Simon, those are sharp insights, pal. Layering oversight sounds like a solid backbone for ethical management, but I guess the real trick is in the balance, getting it just right without tipping over into total oversight or relaxed neglect. It's complex, sure, but maybe that complexity is necessary to navigate something as nuanced as pre-crime tech. Food for thought. How do we evolve this conversation so it keeps pace with the rapid advancements in technology while staying grounded in hard and fast ethics? What's the next step in making sure these theoretical safeguards match the real-world chaos they aim to manage?
Oh, switching gears a bit here. Ever dive into the cybercult stuff, Joe? It's like these online echo chambers turn into rabbit holes super fast.
Uh, Absolutely, Simon. Like these cyber cults, they're fascinating yet pretty alarming. They start off as these tight-knit online communities, which kind of offer a sense of belonging, but can quickly spiral into extreme echo chambers. The structure of these groups, man, it's like they often mirror traditional cults, but with the tools and anonymity of the internet amplifying their reach and impact. Typical belief systems in these groups are usually pretty out there, focusing on radical ideologies that can be social, political, or even apocalyptic. What's tricky is the psychology behind why people stick to or fall deeper into these groups. It's a mix of seeking identity, community, and a sense of purpose, right? But then they get reinforced by constant validation within their group, isolated from opposing views, which just deepens those beliefs. Recruitment methods? Oh, they're crafty. Using targeted content, leveraging algorithms, that's how they pull people in. It's designed to appeal strongly to one's existing beliefs or grievances, making exiting or questioning the group's ideology real tough once you're in. So, while we laugh at tech fails, this darker side of digital gathering spaces, it's a stark reminder of how potent and persuasive technology can be when interwoven with human psychology and vulnerabilities. What do you think about handling these ever-evolving online movements, Simon?
Yeah, you nailed it, Joe. It's like these cyber cults use the internet as their playground to amplify their reach and mold beliefs without seeing someone face to face. Scary how personality profiles and algorithmic know-how lets them target just the right folks who might feel overlooked or disconnected from mainstream society, right? So talking about tackling these movements, isn't transparency in digital platforms operations key here? Like, should we push for open algorithms that can be reviewed, ensuring these don't unknowingly aid radicalization? Also, building stronger community monitoring could help flag these groups faster, maybe. But how resilient do you think these communities are to intervention from outside, whether it's legal, social, or technological? And what's the balance between cracking down on harmful activities and respecting freedom of speech online? Huh?
For sure, Simon. It's like walking the tightrope between freedom and safety, the classic dilemma. Pulling back that curtain on algorithms? Absolutely vital. But cracking these cyber cults, that's a tougher nut. These groups adapt fast, almost like they're battle ready. The question really is, can we outsmart their quick adaptations without stepping on our own principles? There's a whole ethical maze to navigate here.
Man, talking about ethical mazes, it's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in the dark.
No joke, Simon. Reminds me of this one time, right? So I was at this tech conference back before everything went virtual, and there's this workshop on data privacy. Super interesting stuff. So during the break, I ended up chatting with this guy who's deep into cybersecurity. Guy starts sharing his hands-on experiences with monitoring digital platforms for harmful cult-like activities. He told me about how some groups are so layered and cryptic, it's like they're playing 4D chess while everyone else plays checkers. Just when you think you've figured them out, boom, they switch tactics, like changing narratives or platforms entirely. This constant change makes them slippery to grasp and combat effectively. Totally like solving that Rubik's Cube in the dark, man. Each side you align feels like a win, but then you look at the other sides and realize there's more work to be done. Thought that story kind of captured the essence of our chat here, huh?
Oh, that's a wild story, Joe. You're right, it totally fits this brain bender we're discussing. But let me toss something else in there. While these cyber cults are adapting and evolving, like playing 4D chess, aren't we kind of playing checkers with how we handle them? Like maybe it's time to rethink our own strategies, you know? Not just trying to keep up, but staying a step ahead. And here's a thought. Instead of just reacting every time they shift gears or platforms, what if we focused more on the root problems, like isolation or disenfranchisement, that lead people to join these groups in the first place? Maybe prevention over cure. Because let's face it, crackdowns can scatter these groups momentarily, but they're just symptoms of bigger societal issues we keep dancing around. What do you think, man? Could tackling those deeper issues turn our checkerboard into their Rubik's Cube complexity?
Yeah, Simon, diving deeper into that, if we start plugging those societal gaps where alienation breeds, the grounds for these cyber cults to flourish might just dry up. Think about it. Many people who fall into these extreme online movements often feel undervalued, misunderstood, or just plain ignored by the larger society, right? So, say we enhance community engagement programs or boost mental health support systems. That could be key. By addressing issues like social isolation and spreading awareness about the tactics these groups use to lure in members, we kind of create a buffer zone. And education's crucial too, like educating people early on about digital literacy and the psychology of manipulation used by these cyber cults can protect them from falling victim in the first place. This proactive approach, focusing on strengthening the fabric of our communities both offline and online, might not only check the growth of these movements, but also cultivate a more resilient society overall. What do you think, pal? Could this go towards outmaneuvering their psychological trickery?
Absolutely, Joe. You know, maybe it's like we've been playing whack-a-mole with these cyber cults when we should have been hosting community barbecues all along. Build a stronger community, and there's no room left at the inn for toxicity.
Ah, Simon, that's a spot-on analogy, man. Like instead of smacking down the symptoms, we kindle stronger bonds, right? Communities where everyone feels valued, heard, and connected, they're like kryptonite to these toxic online bubbles. So, what do you think are some practical steps we can start implementing in our own neighborhoods to foster this sense of real community and prevent these isolating ideologies from taking root?
One practical step could be like initiating more local forums or workshops that focus on digital literacy and civic engagement. Hosting these regular gatherings not only educates, but also builds a community spirit. Maybe integrate social media wisely too, like creating online groups that mirror these offline efforts, but ensure they promote positive interactions and combat misinformation, kind of bridging the gap between digital and real world ties. Oh, and let's not forget youth engagement. Schools could play a massive role in this. Usher them into discussions about media influence and internet safety early on. This way, we're armoring our future generations against the allure of extreme ideologies online. What do you say, Joe? Feasible steps to cultivate a stronger, more connected community vibe around here.
Solid points all around, Simon. Engaging the youth early and integrating our online efforts with real-world community building, it's like we're laying down strong roots against the storms of extremism. Definitely feasible and something we should rally for more actively. It's fascinating just how pivotal a role education and community involvement play in shielding society from the darker corners of the web. Makes you wonder what other untapped strategies we might explore to reinforce these defenses further, huh? What are your thoughts on expanding this conversation, maybe bringing in some experts in digital ethics or community leaders to dive deeper into ways we can evolve our approach?
You know, speaking of digital ethics, Joe, it kind of brings us to another hot topic, hacktivism. Like these virtual vigilantes roaming the cyber streets, right? They're in that gray area between heroes and villains, depending on who you ask. For instance, with cases like Anonymous taking on Scientology or WikiLeaks releasing confidential data, the motives seem wrapped up in this for the greater good cloak, but there's plenty of controversy about the methods and outcomes. What's your take on this mix of activism and hacking, buddy? Heroic deeds or a slippery slope towards cyber chaos?
Ah, Simon, hacktivism. It's a real brain twister. On one hand, you've got these hackers, right, stepping in where traditional systems might be failing to expose truths or injustices, gives it that Robin Hood flair, slashing through digital forests for the greater good and all. But then there's the flip side, this recklessness with data, potential harm to individuals, and the blurry lines around legality and morality. Take WikiLeaks, man. Massive exposures, changed public dialogue on transparency and privacy, but at what cost? Lives potentially endangered, diplomatic relations strained. It's like they popped open Pandora's box without knowing how to deal with all that chaos spilling out. And then Anonymous, targeting Scientology, raised awareness about some serious concerns within the organization, but also sparks debates over freedom of belief and speech. It's like, where do we draw the line between vigilantism and violation? So if you ask me, Simon, I'm torn. It's like those old westerns where the outlaws are sometimes cheered but could still end up on a wanted poster. What's your stance on defining these boundaries clearer for actions taken in the digital frontier?
Oh man, Joe, it's like we're in the wild west of the internet. Cowboys with keyboards instead of pistols, right? Where each bite and hack could either write a new law or trample the old ones. How do we saddle up for that?
You know, Simon, that totally reminds me of this local story from a few years back in my neighborhood. There was this guy, right? Let's call him Bob. Bob was big into community watch, always keeping an eye out for anything sketchy around town, like he had his own little Justice League minus the fancy gear. One night, Bob catches these teens vandalizing a playground. Instead of calling the cops, he hacks into the local school's CCTV system to identify them, mind you, without permission. His heart was in the right place, trying to keep the streets clean and all, but the method, pretty risky and, frankly, illegal. The twist here, man, it turns out those teens were doing a senior prank, nothing malicious about it. The whole thing escalated when parents got involved, police scrutiny followed, and Bob faced serious backlash for overstepping legal boundaries. It was a mess, Simon. It shows just how tricky it can be when individuals take matters into their own hands, even with good intentions. Kind of mirrors the hacktivism scenario, doesn't it? Balancing that fine line between upholding justice and breaking the law, it's complicated. Makes you think, huh? What's the right way to wield this digital power responsibly?
Man, that's wild. It's like Bob was trying to be Batman, but ended up more like Scandal Man. Really shows that even with the best intentions, when you play with digital fire, you might just get real-world burned. Makes me wonder, are there actually any safeguards in place for our own digital neighborhood watch? So complicated yet fascinating.
Uh, exactly, Simon. It's a tangled web, for sure. You bring up an important point. Safeguards in our digital world, are there enough? And what kind should be established to keep the Bobs of the net within the guardrails while still letting them help police our digital streets? It's like we need some kind of clearer rule book or something, huh? What do you think would be key elements in such a guideline?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. It's like we definitely need some solid rules, right? But here's the rub. Who gets to write them? See, if we leave it all up to government bodies, could end up a bit too, strict. Might choke the whole point of, what do I call it, civilian oversight or activism. Then again, if it's all free-for-all, then you get chaos. Maybe like there needs to be a balanced team, some tech savvies, ethicists, regular Joes and Janes, all cooking up this rule book together, making sure it's fair but firm, protecting both our rights and responsibilities. And let's not forget transparency. Like whatever these rules are, they ought to be clear as day, right? No fine print tricks or loopholes that'll make our heads spin. What do you reckon, buddy? Think that's a recipe for digital peace, or am I just dreaming of utopia here?
Simon, you're on the money with blending expertise for growing these digital guidelines. It's critical to have diverse voices at that table. To deepen our dive into hacktivism dynamics, consider the scale and impact of operations executed by groups like LulzSec or the more widespread reach of the Arab Spring, where hacktivists played pivotal roles. Like in Egypt, 2011, tech-savvy youth boosted the protests' visibility, which significantly swayed public opinion and international perspectives. They used their knowledge for a broader cause that, arguably, tipped scales towards revolutionary change. However, fast forward, say to the incidents involving LulzSec, a splinter group from Anonymous. They caused chaotic disruptions targeting various organizations from Sony to governmental agencies, under the guise of pointing out cybersecurity lapses, but sometimes just for the lulz. Hence the name. Their actions stirred a healthy debate on whether hacktivism slips easily from noble causes to just outright anarchy. Considering the gravity and implications, it's not just about unauthorized data access, but sometimes altered lives and careers. It illustrates how complex and loaded this area remains. Your concept of crafting these rules through collective input might indeed move us closer to navigating this slippery terrain better. These historical instances show us both successes and missteps, framing a vivid picture of what's at stake and why that balanced rulebook is crucial.
Man, Joe, it's like the digital version of walking a tightrope, isn't it? One slip either way and boom, chaos or heroics. Makes you think, are we ready to continually evolve our moral compass with each new technology wave? It's never dull in Digital Town.
You nailed it, Simon. It's like every new tech wave adds more wax to the surfboard. We're either going to catch a thrilling ride or spectacularly wipe out. Makes you wonder what the next big wave will be in this non-stop digital evolution, doesn't it? What's your bet on the next big challenge or innovation that might test our digital moral compass?
Speaking of digital evolution, Joe, it's not just the high-stakes drama that keeps things interesting. Let's lighten the mood a bit. There are these absolutely hilarious missteps and weird happenings in those dark corners of the internet, too. Like, you ever stumble across these keyboard warriors taking themselves way too seriously on forums? Man, the stuff you see is comedy gold. For instance, there was this one forum thread where they were planning a digital protest with synchronized meme posting. Like that would bring the establishment down. And oh, the manifestos some of them type up. More like bedtime stories to help you sleep. Am I right? It's bizarre yet kind of fascinating what counts as rebellion in the virtual world these days. What's the weirdest digital rabbit hole you've found yourself peering into, buddy?
Oh, Simon, that's hilarious. The synchronized meme protest? It's like they're gearing up for a revolution with GIFs and JPEGs. Sometimes it feels like we're in some kind of bizarre comedy sketch rather than real life. And, oh boy, the manifestos, they can get so out there. I stumbled upon this one forum, right? This group was crafting a manifesto that mixed internet slang with old-school revolutionary language. Like imagine, ye old comrades, unite for the lulls. It was trying to be serious, but ended up just being side-splitting. It makes you think, though, what do these wild antics tell us about how people view power and rebellion today? Got any thoughts on that, Simon?
Oh, Joe, it's like watching people play dress up in their digital personas, right? These wild antics. They're a mix of wanting to be taken seriously while still clinging to that anonymity the internet gives. It's almost like a game for some, testing how much impact they can have with the least real-world effort. It shows, I guess, a sort of shift in what power and rebellion mean today. Less about physical rallies and more about who can go viral, you know? But man, mixing ye old with meme culture, that's gold. It highlights this weird generational mashup we've got going on where tradition meets internet irony. Sure makes you think about where we're headed next in terms of digital culture shifts, huh?
Yeah, Simon, you're spot on about the whole dress up and digital persona bit. But there's another angle to consider, right? Like while we chuckle at these meme revolutions and quirky manifestos, they do kind of point towards a deeper, maybe somewhat concerning trend. In a way, even these seemingly trivial online actions can amplify and spread extreme viewpoints that, outside of this humorous context, could foster more divisive or harmful ideologies. It's like, even through jest, these forums facilitate the creation and distribution of potent symbols or messages that can stick with people and influence real-world behaviors and attitudes. So while we're laughing at the absurdity of internet rebels with their GIFs and hashtags, we've got to remain vigilant, man. It's vital to monitor how these harmless digital protests might evolve into serious agendas, potentially rousing larger followings and sparking actual movements. The line between satire and genuine extremism can blur super quickly in the echo chambers of cyberspace. Makes you think, about the double-edged sword that is digital activism and humor combined. What's your take on balancing this awareness with our enjoyment of the lighter side of things?
Totally, Joe. It's like we're on a seesaw, right? On one side, you've got the hysterical antics that make us laugh until we cry. And on the other, there's this dark underbelly where the jokes might be brewing something more sinister. Finding balance so we can enjoy the fun without falling off into chaos, that's the art. And maybe our challenge is being the ones who help spot when the seesaw is tipping too far. Now, speaking of digital realms flipping real-world scripts, ever notice how online trends suddenly become offline craze? Like, one day it's just a funny dog video, and next thing, everyone's doing the pupper dance at weddings.
Oh, absolutely, Simon. It's wild how today's meme is tomorrow's mainstream must-do. It's like the internet has this magic wand that turns obscure into the absolute obsession overnight. Makes you wonder what's next on the viral agenda, huh?
Yeah, Joe, it's nuts. But while we're all getting a chuckle from this viral madness and the next meme taking the world by storm, there's like a bit of a tug war going on. Sometimes I'm scratching my head thinking if we're celebrating creativity or just echoing some nutty noise. Like, think about those internet challenges that blow up. Sure, they're fun, catch your eye, right? But when they swing from eating spicy noodles to something daring like the Tide Pod challenge, that's where I start pulling my hair out. It gets kind of tough to cheer for the net when these things slide downhill. Makes me ponder, are we just fueling a runaway train here? So, Joe, what do you think, man? Are these viral trends harmless fun, leading the charge in innovation, or a wacky wheel we're all spinning without knowing where it stops?
You hit the nail on the head, Simon. It's a fine line between innovative fun and downright risky stunts. These trends have us riding waves, but man, we've got to be wary of the riptides below. About those keyboard warriors, humor can sometimes mask more serious undertones. And making heads or tails of these crazy antics, that's an ongoing saga. What's your next wild discovery in this internet jungle, buddy?
Diving deeper into these internet whirlwinds, Joe, it really fires up some thoughts on the more serious side of things, too. You know? Like, we talk about these keyboard warriors and their digital antics as if they're just a sideshow. But man, some of these groups morph from meme lords into what you might call cyber cults. And no joke, that leap, it's not just about forum drama anymore. These groups can start pulling some serious strings in the world of national security policies. Think about it. Governments now have to actually sit down and rethink cybersecurity laws, adjust how they handle this whole new beast, because a tweet isn't just a tweet when it's part of a coordinated cyber attack or a propaganda machine. What are your thoughts on how this shift from pixels to policy is reshaping our global security landscape, Joe?
Spot on, Simon. The jump from digital banter to influencing global policies really highlights the immense power these online movements have. Cyber cults pushing boundaries makes governments scramble, adapting laws and strategies in ways we've never seen before. It's a whole new frontier for national security, isn't it? Thanks to everyone tuning in today. We've had a blast chatting about everything from meme revolutions to serious shifts in cybersecurity policies. Make sure you join us back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for more deep dives and laughs on the Infinite Podcast. Don't miss out. Catch you next time.